Last night what we saw was 3 individuals weaponize shovels and brooms and attack an ICE officer that had to defend himself.
Do we really want this army, essentially, coming to communities across the country and basically terrorizing people?
This is Today As It Happened. Good Thursday evening to you. I'm Andrew Rafferty here with your chronological look at the biggest events and stories of the day from President Donald Trump's White House meeting with Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado to our exclusive interview with Senator Mark Kelly as the Defense Department moves to punish him following his public criticism of U.S. military actions in the Caribbean. But first, this morning, our Deputy Politics Director, Joe St. George, gave us a look at the political battleground as ICE continues to clash with protesters in Minneapolis. Tensions exploded in Minneapolis last night when a federal officer shot a man in the leg during an immigration enforcement operation. Homeland Security says the officer was attacked with a shovel and a broom handle by 3 people and fired in self-defense. Protesters threw rocks and shot fireworks at a federal agent who responded with tear gas. This is the second shooting in a week involving federal immigration agents in Minneapolis. The mayor says the situation is not sustainable, with a federal force 5 times larger than the city's police department now operating in the Twin Cities. And Scripps News Deputy Political Director Joe St. George joins me now live from Capitol Hill. And Joe, the president this morning saying he could invoke the Insurrection Act, which would allow him to deploy troops potentially to the Twin Cities. What more can you tell us?
Well, there's tension, Andrew, this morning, obviously, between protesters and law enforcement, ICE operations, the images that we've seen unfold in Minnesota for several days now. And there's also the tensions, escalating war of words between government officials, the President of the United States, the governor of Minnesota, the mayor of Minneapolis. Let's get to President Trump's Truth Social post from a little bit earlier this morning in response to the latest protests in Minnesota. Quote, "If the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE, who are only trying to do their job, I will institute the Insurrection Act, which many presidents have done before me, and quickly put an end to the travesty that is taking place in that once great state." Thank you for your attention to this matter. The Insurrection Act does give the President of the United States more authority to use the National Guard, military presence in an American city. There have been many legal disputes over what justifies an Insurrection Act or not, but clearly the threat of one, the threat of using one being deployed by the President of the United States this morning. This follows an evening, as we reported throughout the morning, in which there was another shooting involving a federal agent, an individual in Minnesota. And it follows just hours after Governor Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, addressed the state in an evening televised address. The governor said this about President Trump and the Trump administration. Let's be very clear. This long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement. Instead, it's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of Minnesota by our own federal government. That's a sitting governor of a U.S. state saying this about the Trump administration. The tension real between the Walz, Minnesota leaders, as well as the Trump administration. Meanwhile, the mayor of Minneapolis had a plea for calm, for a plea for peaceful demonstrations as this story continues to play out in the state of Minnesota. Take a listen.
And for anyone that is taking the bait tonight, stop. That is not helpful. Go home. We cannot counter Donald Trump's chaos with our own brand of chaos. And I have seen thousands of people throughout our city peacefully protesting. For those that have peacefully protested, I applaud you.
Again, we're following the latest developments from the Department of Homeland Security on this front. We do have a social media post from the Department of Homeland Security, which we can put on screen, of the latest involving this shooting that occurred yesterday. This happened at around 7 o'clock or so Central Time. Federal law enforcement officers were involved in this altercation in Minneapolis, Minnesota. They walked everyone through at least. This is Homeland Security's version of events at this hour. In an attempt to evade arrest, the subject, there was a traffic stop, and this is referred to as a targeted traffic stop in Minneapolis. In an attempt to evade arrest, the subject fled the scene in his vehicle and crashed into a parked car. The subject then fled on foot. The law enforcement officer caught up to the subject on foot and attempted to apprehend him. When the subject began to resist and violently assault the officer, while the subject and law enforcement were in a struggle on the ground, two subjects came out of a nearby apartment and also attacked the law enforcement officer with a snow shovel and broom handle. So note the weapons here, shovel and a broom. As the officer was being ambushed and attacked by the two individuals, the original subject got loose and began striking the officer with a shovel or broomstick. Fearing for his life and safety as he was being ambushed by three individuals, the officer fired a defensive shot to defend his life, and the initial subject was hit in the leg. I took time to read the length of this because it's important context to provide this latest shooting, how it compares and contrasts with the fatal shooting last week in Minneapolis. But Andrew, one thing's for sure, tensions continue in Minnesota, and we'll see how the president responds, how Minnesota law enforcement and the governor responds throughout the day.
Our Deputy Political Director Joe St. George for us on Capitol Hill. Joe, thank you. And now let's take a look at some of our other top headlines of the day. Breaking news at this hour, at least 20 people are facing federal charges accused of rigging college basketball games. The suspects include at least 15 former college basketball players. The scheme allegedly began in September of 2022. The defendants are accused of bribing players to point shave. This is just the latest gambling scandal to rock high-level sports. Back in October, NBA star Terry Rozier was accused and arrested of conspiring with gamblers to pass on insider knowledge. And in November, Cleveland Guardians pitchers Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz were arrested, accused of working with gamblers to bet on individual pitches they threw during games. And U.S. forces have seized another oil tanker in the Caribbean Sea today. It marks the sixth seizure since December. This one is named Veronica. For months, the military has been taking a hard stance on controlling the flow of oil to and from Venezuela. And rebranding the Department of Defense to the Department of War could cost millions. That's the findings from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. It estimates a price tag of $10 to $125 million. The CBO says the range is large because the Pentagon didn't provide details of its plan. The proposed name change stems from an executive order in September. And coming up on Today As It Happened.
These are human proportions robots. They wear human clothing. They're not naked. They make facial expressions, and they talk to you, and they're funny.
Jefferson, allow me to introduce myself.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. Let's check back in on our daily briefing of today's top stories. The U.S. has completed its first sale of Venezuelan oil. The transaction is worth $500 million. President Trump says the U.S. will partner with American oil companies to sell 30 to 50 million barrels of Venezuelan oil. The White House calls it a historic energy deal after Nicolas Maduro's arrest. Proceeds will be split among Venezuelans, U.S. companies, and the federal government. And a Michigan man will serve 18 months in federal prison for disrupting a Detroit-bound Delta flight in July. Marie Nickpruli refused to wear his seatbelt and stood up repeatedly as the plane was ascending. The 23-year-old also poked a flight attendant in the chest and threatened to kill them. Passengers thought he was trying to open the emergency door, which led to an emergency landing in Iowa. And that personal assistant on your iPhone is about to get a lot smarter and even more chatty. Our tech and travel contributor, Jefferson Graham, joins us now live with some of the details. And Jeff, first of all, apologies to all the people who are watching right now whose phones might start going crazy during this chat. But you're talking about Siri. Jeff, is it getting an upgrade?
Yes, it is. But first of all, to kick it in, you have to say, hey. S-I-R-E, S-A-R-I. Okay, so I think we're okay. You have to say hey. But yeah, Apple and Google announced that they are working together. Apple's basically throwing in the towel. They've been working on this for about 2 years to bring us a chattier, more responsive Siri. And they've basically given up and handed it over to Google, which has its Gemini AI tool that is insanely popular.
Okay, so take us through what that could actually mean for consumers who are using these products.
Well, if you recall, Siri was actually unveiled in 2011. It's been with us for quite some time. It was pretty much of a joke at the beginning. I think it's gotten pretty good. It's not as good as ChatGPT and Gemini. Those chatbots let you start a conversation and get a rolling answers from them, and you can keep it going. You don't have to say, "What's the weather in Paris?" And what will the weather in Paris be next Tuesday? You could just keep on talking and get an answer. Plus, it remembers things about you, so it knows based on everything that you've been writing in there what your interests are. And so it knows where you live, which people could say, well, that's really creepy. I find it kind of useful because I just don't have to over-explain because they already know what my interests are.
Yeah, I mean, it is not uncommon now to see people out in public on their phones using ChatGPT for even what seem like mundane interactions or information. It's becoming very ubiquitous. How confident are you that the new Siri will actually be that much better, almost rival some of these other platforms?
Not confident at all, based on Apple's track record. It was in June 2023 that it announced that a new, more responsive, cooler Siri was going to be introduced in just a few months. We're still waiting. Okay, it's been a long time, and for some reason, Apple couldn't crack it. Now, about a year ago, Google's Gemini was it also ran to ChatGPT, but it's come a long way in a year. So if they really pour their resources into it, maybe we'll all be in for a big surprise.
Maybe. Right now, I mean, I use it to maybe set a timer. I really can't think of any other use for it right now. Is it really that bad?
It's not as bad as they say. It's actually a lot better than it used to be. You could ask trivia questions, and I do a lot more beyond the timer. I do the weather and directions and things like that. But ChatGPT and Gemini for setting up your travel schedules, so many things. I use it all day long because in the old days, I would do a search on Google and get all this crap at the top and all these ads, and now I just get straight to the point. And so I find the search via the chatbots to be way better. And obviously a lot of other people do too because they're really insanely popular.
Yeah, and that would be very exciting if Siri gets even close to the level of functionality as some of those other platforms. I know you were just in Vegas for the Consumer Electronics Show last week. What was your biggest takeaway from your time there?
Biggest takeaway was a whole lot of robots. Speaking of chatbots, robots were ruling the floor, and they were seemingly everywhere. And I've got a little video to show people, so let's watch it.
Jefferson, allow me to introduce myself, Aria.
They're the only ones that don't look like cyborgs, right? These are human proportions robots. They wear human clothing, they're not naked, they make facial expressions, and they talk to you and they're funny.
Robots have been coming to see us for years, this year more than ever. The reason is because businesses have really started adopting them in a big way.
Warehouses, from unpacking the truck to putting the stuff on the shelves to pick and sort them to ship them later on, if it's companies like DHLs, if it's companies like Amazon, like Walmart. I think it's getting there to the point that, a general purpose home robot is relevant, right?
To do what? Folding clothes, making food?
Folding clothes, basic stuff around the house.
How far away are we from that?
I think we're in a 5 years journey. But the beautiful thing, it's going to start right now.
2031, we'll all have robots in our home.
Yeah.
All right, so I don't know if you caught that, but that was a robot playing ping pong, a robot boxing, and of course a robot talking to me. So yes, we will all have a robot by 2031. I'm not so sure. How about you?
Yeah, 5 years from now. I mean, but it does seem from your reporting, yes, we talked a lot about how AI was a huge theme there, but it seems like society is gravitating towards robots being less than like a sci-fi movie character and more something that you can actually see and have some functionality, some use in your everyday life. Is that what they're supposed to be taking away from this?
I think we're going to see a lot more robots in menial work, in Amazon warehouses, putting things into boxes, at the hamburger stand, flipping hamburgers. You know, I think it was it 5 years ago? 5 years ago, maybe a little longer, I went to a hamburger shop in Pasadena, California, and they had just introduced a robot named Flippy. And Flippy was going to flip the hamburgers. And you said to them, well, what about the jobs? What about the jobs? And they said, nobody wants this job. They hate this job. They don't want it. They'll last a day. So this is our answer. And now Flippy is in Jack in the Box in White Castle. And we're just going to see a lot more robots behind the scenes. I don't know that we're going to be living with robots at home, but we'll certainly see them doing a bunch of the grunt work that we don't want to do.
All right, Jefferson Graham, fascinating stuff. Up next on Today As It Happened.
If this plan is put in place, every single American who has health care in the United States will see lower costs as a result.
You're watching Today As It Happened, Scripps News rundown of the biggest events and stories of the day. Let's jump right back in.
Several topics touched on: the growing unrest in Minneapolis, the situation in Tehran, and also your health care. Let's go straight now to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and our White House correspondent, Haley Bull, who was on the North Lawn. Haley, let's start with Minneapolis. The White House providing details today on who ICE is looking for and the crimes that they may have committed.
Yeah, Del, the White House is doubling down on the message that they have consistently shared throughout ICE operations. One, defending their ICE agents. Two, maintaining that they are looking for those with criminal records and not deviating from that message when pressed on U.S. citizens who may be detained in the process. And so what we saw there was them staying the course with their messaging when it comes to ICE specifically, despite being pressed by questions on what we are seeing unfold in ICE operations. They also once more called for Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to call the president, as we have heard officials here at the White House call for state and local leaders to work with the White House. Of course, you've seen the comments from state and local leaders throughout the coverage of this, Dow.
Haley, also announcements concerning affordability, which the president continues to maintain is a Democratic hoax, but a lot of time spent on the issue of health care, something that Americans might like.
Yeah, Del, the president rolling out his own health care plan today and calling for Congress to move forward with this plan. What it does is codify his most favored nation pricing. These are the deals cut with a number of pharmaceutical companies in an effort to lower drug costs. It would also fund a cost-sharing reduction program for healthcare plans that officials here estimate would save $36 billion for taxpayers. And it would also send money, they say, directly to Americans through health savings accounts rather than insurers. This is, and one more point on that, it would also require the posting online of prices by insurance companies for greater transparency and the White House's views. Now, this did not specifically address the extension or lack thereof of the Affordable Care Act subsidies that Americans have seen, many Americans have seen increase with the lack of a specific deal in Congress on that front, as that is still being negotiated among lawmakers. The White House certainly pressed on this and maintained that with their plan, every American, they say, would see lower costs. Additionally, they also stress this would not impact the pre-existing conditions. We are waiting to see how lawmakers react specifically to this, Dow.
Haley, it also appears the tensions with Iran on the streets of Tehran may be cooling. Did the White House provide any answers as to why it believes as many as 800 public executions did not take place yesterday?
Yeah, the White House says all options are still on the table for President Trump as it is continuing to monitor the situation in Iran. An official telling us yesterday that it's a full suite of options. This comes as President Trump said that Iran had stopped the killing and planned executions. The White House putting a number on that as 800 executions stopped. And those comments that came on Wednesday marked a shift in tone, apparently, from President Trump, as for days he had warned Iran of U.S. intervention over the killing of protesters. At the same time today, Del, we are seeing the administration designate a prison as well as Treasury sanction a number of officials involved in shadow banking, as well as the head of the Supreme Council for National Security in Iran, as well as several other Iranian security officials, Del. So it appears the president had said earlier that Iran had wanted to negotiate, had reached out through their channels to do so. The president, in a Truth Social post earlier this week, said no meetings were taking place, and then we saw this pivot in tone. So the White House maintaining for now all options on the table, and we are closely watching those developments.
Coming up on Today As It Happened.
I mean, is that specific call to abolish ICE and rebuild it a mistake?
That's not what I think we should do.
Your ongoing legal feud with Secretary Hegseth, are you confident the courts will rule in your favor against the Trump administration?
Hey, the First Amendment, the Constitution is on my side. He is an unserious guy, and this is a serious issue. So I would suggest that he, at this point, he keeps his mouth shut.
We're glad you're back with us on Today As It Happened. I'm Andrew Rafferty, here with your daily rundown of today's top stories.
This morning, no backing down from Washington concerning that massive immigration crackdown in Minnesota. The president threatening to use the Insurrection Act to send in the U.S. military to the state over the objections of state and local leaders. This crisis has a state asking to be protected from the federal government. Meanwhile, the protesters maintain the federal immigration agents have gone too far. Both mayors of the Twin Cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul, and Minnesota's Attorney General are alleging that ICE is attacking American citizens, causing fear and anxiety. They have now filed for a restraining order, but yesterday a federal judge giving the Trump administration more time to respond. That means for now, ICE can carry on with its crackdown inside that state, and as that mission and issue makes its way through the courts, Arizona Senator Mark Kelly isn't waiting. The Democrat is proposing legislation to limit just how much force ICE can use. Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed is live on Capitol Hill. And Nate, Scripps News is learning exclusively from Senator Kelly about that new bill. He is calling it the Stop Excessive Force in Immigration Act. What does it do?
Well, Del, some of the pieces of this bill are similar to other legislation. In fact, there was a House version of this bill that was introduced all the way back in November. But there are some changes in wake of what we've seen in Minneapolis and other cities all across the nation. But some of these pieces are certainly familiar, making it mandatory for ICE agents to wear body cameras, banning the use of face coverings, requiring name tags on ICE officers, and other key reforms. But there's a couple of things that Senator Kelly has changed in the Senate's version of this bill in the wake, of course, of what we've seen in just the past week or so. The Stop Excessive Force in Immigration Act, the changes would include placing restrictions on the use of deadly force by ICE officers, moving them to the Department of Justice standard, also mandating that officers both receive training and administer first aid if necessary while conducting their operations. It would also limit Immigrations and Customs Enforcement from obstructing state or local investigations of excessive force by agents. We've seen obviously a lot of calls for oversight in Minneapolis, in the state of Minnesota, from from local and state politicians there to try and look into what happened to Renee Good, the woman who was shot fatally by an ICE officer. This bill directly responding to that, allowing those jurisdictions to, in the case of loss of life or grave bodily injury, actually conduct those oversight investigations, kind of removing that shield from ICE agents, the shield that they currently have. There's been the question of how much immunity should ICE officers have. The president and the Trump administration have argued that they have absolute immunity. Certainly, this legislation trying to put some curbs on that.
Nate, is there any chance that these reforms take place? A lot of activists want Democrats on Capitol Hill to go further, and this is where the divide is. Some say they want ICE to be either abolished or defunded. What are you hearing on that?
Well, the negotiations are still ongoing behind the scenes on the government funding bill, specifically the Homeland Security funding bill. ICE is a part of the Department of Homeland Security. And I asked Senator Kelly if he believes that those calls from activists to either defund ICE or rebuild it from the ground up are misplaced, or if he feels like that is a legitimate way that Democrats could move forward. I want you to listen to what he told me and why he believes that these reforms introduced in his bill are necessary. There have been activists who say, let's start over. Let's abolish this thing, rebuild it from the start. I mean, is that specific call to abolish ICE and rebuild it a mistake?
That's not what I think we should do. I think we need serious oversight, accountability, and serious reform, and serious discussions about the size of the force, the training they're getting, the people they're hiring. They're hiring so many people right now.
Is it your hope, though, that there are additional safeguards included in the Department of Homeland Security funding package, things like requiring face masks not be worn, body camera footage?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, why? I mean, they're dressed up as special forces operators in the military, no ID, and they're wearing masks. Do we really want this army, essentially, coming to communities across the country and basically terrorizing people? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make Minneapolis or any other community safer. It just doesn't.
Senator Kelly saying that he hopes this does become law. There is, of course, the question of when Democrats would be able to implement this. They would likely need to work out some sort of bipartisan solution with Republicans, given that Republicans are in control of the House of Representatives and the Senate, to get this bill across the finish line. Certainly a very real possibility that these could be some of the safeguards and curbs on ICE's power, which are included in the Homeland Security funding package. We reported all day yesterday, Del, about those negotiations up here on Capitol Hill, where Democratic lawmakers are looking to put curbs on ICE in exchange for their support for that government funding package. If they do not come to some sort of agreement on funding for the Department of Homeland Security, it could have broad-reaching implications, possibly defunding the Transportation Security Administration, TSA agents at the airport as well. We could be in a partial government shutdown by the end of January if there is no bipartisan agreement. Certainly, this bill, just another sign of the direction Democrats are looking ahead as part of these negotiations over funding the government and putting curbs in place on ICE, all while they are not the party in power. At the same time, their votes likely will be necessary to get government funding across the finish line in just a few short weeks, Del.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem saying just this morning that her agents have done nothing wrong. Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed for us live on Capitol Hill. Nate, thank you very much.
The president and his team have communicated to the Iranian regime that if the killing continues, there will be grave consequences.
Those consequences may have forced Iran to blink. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt saying Iran halted 800 scheduled executions for now. There is some calm, with several Arab nations working to keep things civil between Washington and Tehran. Meanwhile, 26-year-old Iranian protester Irfan Soltani was scheduled to be executed on Wednesday. Then there was a last-minute reprieve, and now the question is, what happens next? That could hang on what the administration does next. Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller is live in New York City now. And Alex, you just spoke to Soltani's cousin. What did she tell you?
Well, she is still very much concerned for the well-being of her cousin. She actually only gave me her first name because even though she lives outside of Iran right now, she's worried about her safety and that of Irfan and his family who are still inside of Iran. Now, even though he has had his sentence apparently stayed for now, the conditions in these prisons are also concerning, where we are learning that he is likely being beaten and tortured while he awaits trial. We got the news this morning that Irfan likely won't be executed. What's your reaction to that?
I was happy that the Voice of the World reached to temporarily postpone Irfan's execution. But after that, there is no news or movement about Irfan's torture and scheduled execution. At the moment, we are all frozen for news of what comes next.
Even if he is not sentenced to death, what does the future look like for him in Iran? Because he's still facing charges, just different ones.
This situation is still very concerning, as the sentence they gave to a young person for simply seeking basic human rights is a travesty. There is no true law or justice in the Islamic Republic. They can suddenly take countless lives and just claim it's religiously ordained, God's will.
How nervous are you for his safety?
When I see that they can condemn someone to death within a matter of days, my concern for Irfan grows heavier by the day.
Are you worried that President Trump is now seemingly not going to attack Iran? How do you feel if the U.S. doesn't do anything?
What we need to save us is President Trump's decision to help. All planned future killings and executions can be circumvented only by Mr. Trump's decision. All our hopes are on him. From the moment Irfan's name spread across the world and became known everywhere, it coincided exactly with the day news of his execution reached President Trump.
What can the international community do?
My wish is that maximum pressure be put on the Islamic Republic, that all their ambassadors be terminated because they're the representatives of a lying regime in those embassies, to send the message that all the world is united against the Islamic regime.
And I also asked her to tell me about Irfan, the person. We've seen his face across our screens for the last couple of days, and she said that he loves weightlifting, he loves soccer, photography, and his family. He's very close to his family. And above all else, she says that he's a moral person who has never been aggressive, and he has this deep concern, Del, for not only his own basic freedoms and civil rights, but for that of his country, and that is why he was out there in the street protesting.
Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller live for us in New York City. Alex, thank you.
And coming up on Today As It Happened.
We had hoped that maybe the Trump administration had forgotten us a little, but that's not, we can see that's not happening.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Andrew Rafferty. Let's jump right back into our rundown of the top stories of the day.
Renee Good's family has hired the same law firm that represented George Floyd's family to investigate her death. The family says ICE officers killed the Minneapolis mother as she tried to follow agents' instructions. They want Good to be remembered as an agent of peace and urge the public not to use her death as a political flashpoint. The Justice Department says it sees no basis for a federal civil rights investigation. Whole milk will soon be coming to a school cafeteria near you. Yesterday, the president signing that bill overturning Obama-era limits. The Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act allows schools to serve whole and 2% milk along with lower fat options. The change affects about 30 million students in the National School Lunch Program. New dietary guidelines emphasize full-fat dairy as part of a healthy diet. President Trump meeting with Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado at the White House today. Meeting comes as his administration looks to expand oil drilling operations in that country. The meeting also comes nearly 2 weeks after Trump ordered the extraction of ousted Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, and days after the administration confirmed the first sale of Venezuelan oil. Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull is live at the White House on the North Lawn. And Haley, what do we know about the president's meeting with Machado today?
Although that meeting has wrapped, as Maria Corina Machado is now meeting with lawmakers on Capitol Hill as questions swirl around the future of Venezuela. We are waiting to hear from President Trump himself, but you can see Machado greeting supporters outside the White House as she left the West Wing following that meeting, saying, quote, "We are counting on President Trump for the freedom of Venezuela." She's now again meeting with lawmakers after she met with the Pope heading into today's meeting, including on the transition to democracy. Now, the White House heading into this said that they were expecting a positive discussion and for President Trump to speak about the realities on the ground. And while the White House press secretary praised Machado, they also did not indicate that the president's reservations about her, his assessment about her, had changed materially heading into this meeting. Following the ouster and the arrest of Nicolas Maduro, the president suggested that Machado, Venezuela's opposition leader, did not have the respect to lead the country. Instead, the Trump administration backing an interim government led by Maduro's number two, Delcy Rodriguez, who the White House says has been extremely cooperative and who President Trump spoke with and praised yesterday. Again, the White House today is suggesting that his assessment of Machado had not changed heading into this meeting. Listen.
I think the president's assessment that you just pointed out was based on realities on the ground. It was a realistic assessment based on what the president was reading and hearing from his advisors and national security team. And at this moment in time, his opinion on that matter has not changed.
And of course, we are waiting to see if his opinion has changed following this meeting. He has previously suggested that there was a potential role for Machado moving forward. So certainly a number of questions remain. And while the White House has indicated a commitment to democracy, they have not given a timeline for elections in Venezuela. Dal.
Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Beaufort live on the North Lawn. Haley, thank you very much. An update now on the situation in Greenland. Several European countries have now put their troops on the ground. They're there, they say, to beef up security.
This is the US consulate in Nuuk. It's a small building, but one at the centre of a big international issue.
The United States is not budging on its ambition to control not just this consulate, but the entire island of Greenland. President Trump says it's a matter of national security, but the people of this remote, far northern capital are worried. They say they feel let down by the US, a country considered to be their closest ally.
I am so disappointed of Trump. And I would say he will never get our island.
And we had hoped that maybe the Trump administration had forgotten us a little, but that's not. We can see that's not happening. And right now, everything is really at stake.
Greenland is a place of stunning beauty. The island is 3 times the size of Texas, covered with a vast ice sheet, remote mountains, and deposits of rare earth elements and untapped oil fields. The Prime Minister here in the self-governing territory of Denmark says a geopolitical crisis has broken out, and there is a defiance here. A majority of the population of 57,000 overwhelmingly say they do not want to become part of the US. Denmark and other European nations are now beefing up their military presence here to show they are serious about the island's security.
Here in Greenland, there is a feeling of uncertainty and real concern for what will happen next if the US does not give up its ambition to control this island. Ross Cullen, Scripps News Group, Nuuk, Greenland.
Up next on Today As It Happened.
GLP-1 medications have helped many people lose weight, but some employers say they can't afford to cover them. Why one school system is making a change and how employees are responding.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened, Scripps News debrief of our top stories of the day. Let's jump right back in.
Fewer Americans applying for unemployment benefits last week. U.S. layoffs also remain low. Jobless claims falling by 9,000 to 198,000, which was less than analysts expected. The report coming after December hiring remains sluggish, with only 50,000 jobs added. Fed Chair Jerome Powell saying the job market may be weaker than it looks. Companies including UPS, General Motors, and Amazon recently announcing job cuts.
Many people have found success losing weight with GLP-1 medications, but the growing demand is driving up healthcare costs, and now some employers say they can't afford to cover them.
It's a cycle many people struggling with their weight know all too well.
I've tried Weight Watchers, I've tried diet routines and going to the gym and everything, and I'd lose some weight, plateau, lots of times put it back on, maybe lose a little more and then plateau.
Krista Donnelly is a teacher in Howard County, Maryland, and no matter what she tried, the scale wouldn't move the way she hoped. So she talked to her doctor, her family, and started a GLP-1 medication last February.
I've gone down 4 pant size. I feel so much better. I've got so much more energy. I'm able to move. I get down on the floor. Students, I can get back up easily. It's not like, that struggle to get back up off the floor.
Plus, her blood pressure is now in a healthy, normal range. For her, the medication has been life-changing, which is why she wants Howard County Public School System to reverse their decision to stop covering it.
They sent us an email stating that they would stop covering any medication as of the end of March of 2026.
And what was your reaction when you saw that?
Devastated.
HCPSS says coverage for GLP-1 medications used to treat diabetes will continue, but coverage for weight management will end. In just 2 years, costs rose from about $485,000 over 3 months to more than $3.6 million. District leaders say without the change, employee premiums would have risen nearly 20%. Instead, employees are still facing a 13% increase.
They'll cover blood pressure medication, they'll cover cholesterol medication, but they don't want to cover a GLP. And to me, that's a preventative medication.
A recent survey by KFF, a nonpartisan health policy group, found employers across the country are struggling with the cost of covering GLP-1 weight loss drugs. Nearly 2/3 of large employers said covering GLP-1 drugs had a moderate or significant impact on their prescription drug costs. Federal officials have announced deals aimed at lowering the price of these medications, but it's unclear whether those savings will reach employers.
I want to have that say, I want people to look at medication as needed by the people and not just the bottom line.
According to that KFF survey, fewer than 1 in 5 large employers nationwide cover GLP-1 medications for weight loss. Mallory Safaste, Scripps News Group.
A sick astronaut and 3 crewmates returned to Earth early this morning in NASA's first ever medical evacuation from space. The SpaceX capsule splashed down in the Pacific Ocean near San Diego after an 11-hour journey from the International Space Station. NASA won't say which astronaut got sick or what exactly happened, but officials say the crew member was stable in orbit. The mission was cut short by more than a month so that the astronaut could get proper medical care on Earth. All 4 astronauts are now undergoing medical checks before heading to Houston. And for more on the mission and that return, we're joined now by former NASA astronaut and current Texas congressional candidate Terry Virts. Terry, thank you for joining us once again. Good morning to you. I know we don't know the specifics here and certainly not asking you to speculate, but broadly speaking, what sort of illness or medical condition would compel NASA to bring a crew home early?
So this is something we've known might be a problem since the beginning of the space station program. This has always been our contingency. The docs used to tell us that there was a 1% to 3% chance every year that somebody would have to get evacuated. And actually, my background was as an F-16 pilot, but I was the crew medical officer on both of my missions, so I had some basic medical training. The problem is there's only so much you can do on the space station. We have basically a few backpacks full of different medicine. There's an ultrasound machine and some basic diagnostic equipment, but anything beyond that, or if you need specialized medicine, we just don't have it there. So the good news is this wasn't an emergency. Had it been an emergency, they would have been back a week ago.
And thank you for joining us on Today As It Happened. I'm Andrew Rafferty. Have a great Thursday night.